Welcome to our webinar. Woomentum, Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, and Innolab Asia. Thank you for your participation in the digitalization, managing time, cost, and people to embrace technology in business webinar. The following webinar is a pre-publication engagement for the second phase of the path to success, how women-owned business transform in the era of digitalization research project. The qualitative study explores how digitalization can offer new opportunity for women-owned small and medium enterprise to overcome gender-related challenges. During the first phase of the study in 2020, 4 Southeast Asian countries like Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Myanmar were involved in the case study. The study will be publishing its second phase soon, with 3 additional case studies in South Korea, Vietnam, and Singapore. And today, we would love to have you here to share what we have found with the expert. So before we begin, I would like to invite Miss Chris Paris to open a speech. She's a senior program manager, a social and economic governance program Asia, KAS Japan. So please welcome her.
Thank you for the introduction, Tung. Thank you very much. I hope everyone can properly hear me. So on behalf of Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, Woomentum, and Innolab, I warmly welcome everyone to our webinar on managing time, cost, and people to embrace technology in your business. So the webinar is the first among a set of 3 that aims to share the knowledge that we have gained and collected over almost 2 years of research on the impact of digitalization on women-owned small and medium enterprises. So the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, or KAS, is a German political foundation whose headquarters is based in Berlin. But we are operating worldwide in over 100 offices in pursuit of the values of freedom, solidarity, and justice. So KAS's Regional Economic Program Asia, or SOPAS, is based at the Japan office. And in 2020, we partnered with Woomentum, a valuable knowledge-based network of women entrepreneurs led by Muna Auri, to launch the publication, The Path to Success, How Women-Owned Businesses Transform in the Era of Digitalization. So in this first set of country studies, we focus on Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Myanmar. So these comparative case studies showed how women small and medium enterprises, or WSMEs, use and take advantage of new technologies to grow their businesses. The research also outlined WSMEs' challenges when it comes to accessing financing, mentoring, improving business processes, and COVID-19 mitigation and management. So this year, we expanded the research to include 3 additional countries. So these are Singapore, South Korea, and Vietnam. So in almost all of the countries that we have managed, we found a common theme. The pandemic accelerated WSME's digitalization, but these processes are adopted ad hoc. So without a clear digitalization roadmap as a foundational guide. WSMEs have benefited tremendously from digitalization, but most want a systematic set of processes to initiate these changes and sustain these gains. So this afternoon's webinar will precisely tackle this immediate and important point. So we have a set of expert panelists moderated by a seasoned practitioner. So we'd especially like to thank our partner, Innolab Asia, for helping us identify the speakers and co-organizing this webinar with us. The panel will share best practices and answer any burning questions around change management for digitalization. It is our hope that you will find the session most useful for your businesses and for your enterprises. Again, welcome and thank you in advance for participating in this webinar.
Thanks a lot, Miss Chris. Well, I will. I would like to thank you for your sharing, and beside that, I would love to acknowledge that we have the agenda today. So we have the panel after Miss Chris Paris. We have the panel discussion. We will discuss about the first step for implementation, managing costs of digitalization, how to manage employee buying, and finally, we discuss how to manage time between digital adoption and business operation. So before we start our panel, I would love to conduct a small poll. So then we will know how important is digitalization for SME. So the technical team, can you help me? Wow, thanks a lot for your participation. So after the panel, you can have some of the Q&A. If you have any question, you can ping on the question on the group chat. So then we can give it to the panelists. So my name is Thắng. I'm the co-founder and CEO for the InnoLab Asia. So we would love to partner with Woomentum and KAS to conduct the survey and also organize this webinar. So I'm honored to moderate the panel. So join me with this panel. I would like to introduce Miss Vietnam expert, Miss Nguyễn Thị Diệu Hằng. So she's the CEO of Business Startups Support Center. Besides that, she's also the Vice President of Young Business People Association, a very well-known person in Vietnam. The second one is the Vietnam entrepreneur, La Hiểu Lê. So she's the Managing Director of Bạn Đạt. It's a kitchenware manufacturing, import and exporting consumer good and warehousing real estate company located in Ho Chi Minh City. And a third person I want to introduce is he's also an entrepreneur expert, entrepreneur and foreign expert, Đức Ly. So he's a CSO of Fin2B, a finance to business. And his business to support the small and medium enterprise with efficient financing. So please welcome them with me. So before I start my session, I would love to ask everyone here, in your experience, what is the hardest part about adopting technology in your business? Is it time? Is it cost? Is it about people? Why is it? Wow, we see your participation. So as you see here, most business owners usually know which part of their business operation they want to digitalize. But when it comes to implementation, there are so many digital options out there that it becomes overwhelming to understand what tools are the best suited for their industry and workflow. Many of our research participants have mentioned that it can be overwhelming and time consuming to try and understand all options in the market and figure out what is suitable for business. This is especially a challenge when business owner and team are not as confident with their technological skill. So with this one, I come with the first question. Want to ask Ms. Yuhan. What approach should business owner take to identify which digital tools are right for their business transformation? And what are some of the key factors to consider? Well,
yeah,
waiting for the answer.
yes. So feel free when I speak Vietnamese. So I'm sorry, I will touch my Vietnamese, and Miss Thang, please help me to translate for English. Yeah.
We have interpreter, so don't worry. You can speak freely in Vietnamese.
Yes. Theo chị nghĩ á, thì thông thường á, các cái doanh nghiệp họ sử dụng cái kỹ thuật số cũng tương tự như việc các mình đi xây nhà. Nếu mà mình có nhiều tiền á, thì lúc đó và có thời gian thì lúc đó mình có thể tự design, tự thiết kế, và có thể là nếu như làm sai thì mình có thể làm lại, bởi vì nó đúng cái gu của mình, và mình có thể customize nó được. Còn nếu như chúng ta ít tiền và chúng ta chưa biết là chúng ta thích muốn cái gì á, chưa biết rõ và chưa hình dung rõ cái chúng ta muốn cái gì á, thì tốt nhất là chúng ta nên đi thuê. Ở một khoảng thời gian là phải hợp chúng ta mua. Giống như là chúng ta đối với các cái doanh nghiệp á, thì chị nghĩ là cái cách tiếp cận tốt nhất cho cái xác định cái công cụ kỹ thuật số á, là mọi người có thể giống như chính BSC hoặc một vài cái doanh nghiệp nhỏ trong cái cộng đồng của BSC á, thì thông thường là mọi người sẽ thuê là nhanh nhất để sử dụng, và sau một quá trình sử dụng thấy mình thấy mình biết những tính năng này, mình biết những chức năng này, và mình có thể build. Lúc đó mình có thể build bởi vì mình hình dung được là cái nhà mình cần có bao nhiêu phòng, lúc đó mình sẽ rất là dễ đi thiết kế. Thì đó là cái cách mà chị nghĩ là một cái chủ doanh nghiệp nên tiếp cận khi mà xác định một công cụ kỹ thuật số cho mình. Còn những cái yếu tố mà cần xem xét thì như khi nãy là đã có show trên màn hình rồi. Theo chị là có 3 cái yếu tố. Thứ nhất là liên quan đến tài chính, có nhiều tiền hay không, sẵn sàng chi trả ở mức bao nhiêu, bởi vì trên thị trường có rất nhiều công cụ. Cái thứ hai liên quan đến thời gian triển khai, có gấp hay không. Ví dụ như nếu mà giống như Covid vừa rồi, mình cần một cái platform để bán hàng nhanh, trong tuần đó mà mình phải build người, mình thuê người, mình tự làm thì rất là lâu, thì liên quan đến cái thời gian triển khai. Và cái thứ ba là liên quan đến đội ngũ nhân sự, thì đội ngũ nhân sự của mình có khả năng tiếp cận và sử dụng ngay hay không, hoặc là bắt đầu từ cái bộ phận nào, thì lúc đó mình sẽ dễ cho cái việc mình lựa chọn những cái công cụ kỹ thuật số cho phù hợp.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Hằng, for your insightful and knowledgeable answer. Well, come back to that. I would love to ask you, Mr. Duc, because you're not just the business owner, but you are the one that support for the SME. So, what is your opinion about the approach that the business owners should take to identify which digital tools are right for their business transformation, and what are some of the key factors to consider?
I think just to explain what we do, first would be helpful to where I'm coming from. So Hinterby provides supply chain financing to a tool for financial institutions, but this is to eventually support the small and medium-sized enterprises, because small and medium-sized enterprises, they like credit, and supply chain finance allow them to utilize their credit-worthy partner to receive a very efficient and low-cost funding. So what we are trying to achieve is to provide options for financial institutions in Vietnam to create a bigger business and bigger opportunity to support SMEs. However, in the perspective of a solution provider to financial institutions, I would like to point out that a lot of times when you're talking about digital transformation, you're talking about internal process innovation and how it can improve the process internally or save costs, reduce error, and things like that. But I also like to point out that some of digital transformation is also a way to integrate closely with your customers. So say you're operating a platform to integrate your process with your customer's process, and you increase approachability to your service to your customers, and at the same time you're sometimes able to save costs for your customers as well, because your customer is much more organized to process the transaction with you. So that's just one thing that I like to point out, that we also, one of the things that we bring to the table to our client, who are the financial institutions, is for them to acquire new customers and serve them in a more effective way. So I think when you're talking about digital transformation, I think you might need to maybe broaden your horizon to look at internal process innovation, as well as how you connect with your customers.
Wow, that's quite interesting. And thanks a lot, Đức, for your sharing. So then I would like to ask the one that already successfully implemented ERP, enterprise resource planning, for fully integrating and managing own operation. So Miss Miss Huela, could you share your decision-making process?
Thank you, Anh Thắng, and good afternoon, everyone from Vietnam, and hello. So at Vandat, we are a manufacturing and warehousing company. So we specializing in producing kitchenware utensils for exports and the B2B market, as well as providing warehouses for clients ranging from SMEs, startups to multinational companies in Vietnam. So essentially, technology has always been ingrained at our company, such as investing in machineries for sustainable production, or leveraging ERP in our daily operations, as Anh Thắng just mentioned. Usually for B2B companies like us, we would place more emphasis on optimizing and automating internal operations. Whereas for B2C companies, they would invest more in customers-facing channels like CRM. So our journey of adopting ERP began in late 2015, as we recognized the inefficiencies in our operations as our business continued to grow rapidly. We came up with an objective, more of a challenge question: how to make well-informed decisions in less time to better serve our clients through up-to-date and real-time data. This stemmed from challenges that were faced, like needing a very long time to track all inventory, to compute salaries for staff, or planning to purchase raw materials and for production, as the number of orders vary depending on the time of the year. So even though we had an accounting software for taxes and invoicing, we used to rely a lot on Excel and manual tasks to record information and handle documents. The next step that we did was that we built what I would call a special task force team, consisting of the executive team, the managers from each department, and the IT team to tackle the challenge question that we proposed, and also to discuss how we envision the company within the next 3 years. Eventually, we decided to pursue ERP, as it is the solution that can best solve our challenge question and in return promote the company's growth. So like Anh Thắng briefly mentioned, ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. It is a business management software that allows a company to integrate and manage all its business operations, from accounting, HR, sales and marketing, manufacturing, warehousing, inventory, you name it. There's everything. And I'm sure many of our webinar attendees are also familiar with ERP. The way we see is that different departments in the company are pieces within a puzzle. So as leaders, we want to be able to see and understand the whole picture of the puzzle. Hence, ERP would allow us for that process integration and the whole picture visualization to happen. Now comes the next step of evaluating a lot of suppliers and select the right one. So we evaluated on factors such as pricings, and that was the most important factor, to see whether the pricing stayed within our budget, the suitability and customization, whether it offers the needed solution to overcome a lot of our inefficiencies, how easy it is to use, the consultation, the customer support, security and privacy, as well as the reputation of the supplier. So such as who have been their customers, what are the success rate of their implemented project, etc. We actually consider both global and local ERP suppliers. For global ERP suppliers such as SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, even though they are very well-established brands, they are a lot more expensive compared to local suppliers. And eventually we chose a local ERP supplier after evaluating all the factors that I just mentioned. And another advantage that we realized of having a local ERP supplier is that they are more flexible and can comply with the different accounting regulations and standards in Vietnam. Now, so we went on with having an on-premise ERP, meaning that all data is stored and hosted in the physical server. But for the past 2 years, we have switched to hybrid ERP, meaning that we use both on-premise ERP, since we already have the servers installed, and also a cloud-based ERP, which offer us the flexibility of assessing the system and data anytime from anywhere. And this helped us tremendously during the lockdown work from home period of COVID. Now comes the very important step of implementation stage. So we had to migrate all our existing paperwork and data into ERP, which was a very painful and long process. We worked closely with the supplier on training our staff to use the system. And of course, those who are in the special task force team will need to learn how to use it well as well. When we rolled out, we actually rolled out in phases for different departments. So this allowed us to train and focus on each department at a time instead of having to roll out everything all at once, and that could be very messy. And we were able to identify and fix any problems that arise. Overall, it took us 1.5 years to complete the ERP transition, but ever since it had continuously allowed us to see the whole company puzzle picture by having up-to-date data and reduced a lot of time per repetitive manual task.
Wow, it's quite a lot of work in the decision-making process. And I think that as a business owner, most of the people have to been through this one. And during our research, we found that more than 50% of participants in Korea, Singapore, and Vietnam cited cost is the key challenge to digitalization. And why there are many affordable digital tools available in the market for SME, upfront costs can still be a major barrier. Once iteration and adoption of more comprehensive digital solutions become necessary when business grows, business owner must decide whether the benefit of digitalizing certain business process outweigh the cost. So, Mr. Dukley, how can business owner evaluate if a certain tool are worth the investment? What financial and opportunity cost benefit should be considered?
Well, I think the simple answer is you have to weigh in cost and benefit, but that would be just an irresponsible answer. I guess measuring benefit is a difficult thing for most part. I think for internal process innovation, I think you have to be clear about what you're after. So some of our customers were after reducing processing time. Some of them are after reducing error. So these things can be estimated, and then either it can lead to reduction in your team size or increase in productivity to do more business. On the other hand, as I talked about, our platform can be used to integrate your business with your customers, and sometimes large customers, they really require you to connect with them in structured way. And I mean, some of our customers are targeting very large customers such as Samsung and Hyundai Motors, and they require you to do to approach them with accessible service in a platform way. So I think depending on your initiative, your benefit will be clearly different. I think it's much more easier if it leads to a sales and a bottom line benefit. I think it's a bit more challenging if you're trying to save costs by innovating internal process. But I think in both ways, it can be done. But I think you need to really focus on knowing what the benefit is. In terms of cost structure, I think a lot of times the solution provider are willing to have both models of large upfront cost versus pay-as-you-go, kind of scheme. And we have customer in either extreme. We have customer who prefer to pay upfront and be done with it, and we have customers who would like to reduce the upfront cost and use pay-as-you-go. So I think you need to speak to your solution provider on that. I think they would be flexible.
Interesting. So how about Miss Yu Hang? What is your opinion on this one?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I missed the question.
How can business owner evaluate if a certain tool are worth investment? What financial and opportunity cost benefit should be considered?
Okay. I speak Vietnamese. Chị nghĩ là cái việc số hóa thì nó cũng giống như việc chúng ta may áo cho một đứa nhỏ. Mình phải tưởng tượng được là 3 năm nữa nó nặng bao nhiêu, nó cao bao nhiêu, để ngay từ bây giờ 3-5 năm nữa tương lai nó như thế nào, để ngay từ bây giờ khi mình may đo mình sẽ mất một khoảng thời gian mà may đo xong thì trong quá trình các bạn lớn lên nha, thì nó không phải mặc vừa trong cái giai đoạn tiếp theo, nhưng cũng đừng có may rộng quá ngay tại thời điểm này, bởi vì khi rộng quá chắc chắn là mọi người sẽ không mặc. Nó quá cái nhu cầu của mọi người sẽ không mặc, nhưng nó vừa đủ trong thời điểm hiện tại thì mai mốt khi cái doanh nghiệp họ lớn lên nhé, thì nó lại mình phải đập đi xây lại, mình phải may áo mới bởi vì nó không còn phù hợp nữa. Nên cái việc xem xét một cái công cụ mà có đáng đầu tư hay không thì mình cũng sẽ phải tiên lượng cả những cái mà có khả năng mở rộng sau này. Đó là một trong cái yếu tố mà rất là quan trọng. Nếu mà nói về những cái lợi ích chi phí tài chính thì thông thường hầu như tất cả các cái doanh nghiệp số hóa thành công ở Việt Nam mà chị biết thì mọi người, cái thứ đầu tiên mọi người quan tâm đó là cái easy nhất để thuyết phục những cái người mà cản trở số hóa là về tài chính. Việc áp dụng cái chi phí đầu tư cho số hóa nó thấp hơn cái chi phí mà cái giải pháp đó mang lại, cái giá trị mà giải pháp đó mang lại thì rất là dễ áp dụng, bởi vì nó chứng minh bằng con số. Thì đó là một cái mà có thể giúp để thuyết phục, và một trong những cái mà để mình may một cái áo nó không quá rộng và nó phù hợp, bởi vì mình cũng không tiên lượng được là cái cơ thể mình nó lớn nhanh cỡ nào. Thì đó là một trong những cái phần mà các cái doanh nghiệp số hóa thành công họ áp dụng.
Wow, thanks a lot, Miss Yu Hang, for your sharing a story which reflect how we digitalize in our business, which is great because people can visualize what you are sharing. Thank you. And well, turn back to Miss Huela, because you are the one that implemented the ERP in your company. So how did you finance the upfront cost of adopting more advanced digital solutions such as ERP, which is not really cheap solution? So did you leverage any external financing option?
For us, we self-finance and also loan from partner bank. Now, if we were to loan, then obviously we would need to consider the interest rate versus the ROI and such, as the panelist also mentioned. Most digital tools now are in the form of SaaS subscription model, software as a service, and can be paid in monthly instrument instead of a large upfront sum. So this could also help to lower down the initial cost at first. And especially at present, many suppliers are more willing to offer free trial for a couple of months, discount, and more flexible payment terms for SMEs to adopt new digital solutions.
Well, so after your sharing, that's not really costly, but it should be considered as a long-term investment, and how we negotiate with the supplier to make it easy for us to breathe when we apply digitalization to our company.
I'd like to clarify a little bit that ERP is very costly, especially if you have a lot of users or a lot of applications, right? So again, going back to my sharing is that you need to think about the objective and what benefits could a digital tool such as ERP bring to the company on a longer term. So for example, for us, it's 3 to 5 years, in terms of advancing our internal operations and such. It is not, it is not cheap.
I think when you turn it into the long-term investment and the future benefit that can bring when you apply the digitalization, comparing with not applying it. So I think between the cost for both sides, and you have the decision. One of the, well, when we talk about the, when we talk about the first, we talk about the cost we managing, but that is one thing. During our research, we found something that more interesting. So one of the top universal challenge to digitalize is employee resistance. A study done by McKinsey in 2018 found that 70% of digital transformation in business fail, most often due to employee resistance. So WSME participants in our study also cited team adoption as their #1 challenge to implementing digital tool in their business. So in this case, I would love to ask Ms. Huela first. So were there any example where is your team that convinced you to adopt a certain digital solution, and what this like compared to example that where you forced the adoption of a certain digital tool on your employee? So which way?
Absolutely. There were a lot of times that it was actually the teams themselves who wanted to adopt certain digital solutions. So for example, in terms of reaching out to new customer segment to drive sales or reduce the lead time for delivery. In these circumstances, the staff are very eager and encourage each other to try out the new solutions. Now, going back to our ERP implementing story, we noticed there were 3 staff demographics. So the first group were the early digital adopters. That's how we would categorize and call them. So these people are those who are tech savvy, have an innovative mindset, and are not afraid to try out new technologies because they see the values these technologies can bring. The second group are those who can have it anyway, which means that they're used to the older and slower manual ways, but are still okay with adopting the new technologies once they are convinced of the values and benefits. And lastly, of course, we have the resistance, those who do not want any change at all whatsoever, either because they are so used to the old ways from habit, or fear that their salary would be reduced, or even worse, they could lose their jobs. Now, we understand that with any digital adoption, or when you talk about any change to the older habitual way of working and doing what everyone is already used to, the change can be scary, right? It could be risky and would require a lot of efforts. So in this case, we realized it is very important for upper management to be on board, persistent and committed throughout the whole adoption process. The whole plan would fall apart if our executive team or if any of the manager within the department participated cannot commit and just switch back to the old way. So when we started the discussion about implementing ERP, we were fortunate that the majority of our special task force team were all on board and recognized the need for ERP in our company operations, even though there was still some resistance at first. We also identified who were the early digital adopters, which were largely staff from the IT, sales, and marketing teams, and leveraged their enthusiasm to convince and influence others. Now, we also used verbal encouragement, praises, and incentives such as bonus.
Wow, it's a long process from your company as a Vietnamese company. So I want to ask Mr. Dukley, so how is your case in Korea? And as I know you that you also have a company in Vietnam. So can you share your case?
I agree completely with what Huila said, and she said it really nicely. So I don't know if I can add anything more. But I think I just maybe one thing. I think it depends on who brings up the suggestion first. That's very important. So it really depends on the topic. I mean, some of the things are naturally brought up by the employee. If there's something that they can outsource, they don't want to do, then of course they'll make a suggestion. So it's important to, I think, maybe share the goal and trying to have this open discussion, and not to be so directive about your suggestions. Maybe the best way for you to set up a goal and naturally make the team suggest the solution. So when they have ownership of this idea, it makes everything so much easier. And of course, as Huela said, persistence is very important by the management. It's very easy to be taken away from the initiative because there's so many things going on. But if you're not going to be persistent and committed, it's better not to do it at all. It's very important that you're committed and persistent.
Wow. So actually, it has to take the gut and the will, and of course, persistence from the business owner who force forward, take the lead, and set the tone, so that the team can maybe at first can resist a bit, but later they're gonna follow. Wow. So that is the sharing from the entrepreneur. How about the Vietnam the entrepreneur expert, Ms. Yu Hằng? So in your experience, have you noticed if employees with particular mindsets are more likely to embrace digitalization, and how can entrepreneur nurture that mindset amongst their team? As an expert who advise a lot of business.
Ok. Theo chị thì có 3 cái nhóm mà nhân viên họ có cái tư duy liên quan đến cái đối tượng, liên quan đến việc cái chấp nhận, dễ dàng chấp nhận cái chuyển đổi số hóa. Thì nhóm thứ nhất là họ quan tâm đến lợi ích kinh tế. Nếu như việc chuyển đổi đó mà giúp cho họ đem lại nhiều thu nhập hơn, hoặc là làm việc ít thời gian hơn, hoặc là có một cái lợi ích gì đó, thì họ sẽ sẵn sàng chấp nhận cho cái việc thay đổi. Cái nhóm thứ hai là những người mà họ có tâm với công ty, họ yêu thích công ty, họ yêu quý sản phẩm họ tạo ra. Và khi chúng ta chia sẻ với họ rằng là công ty mình sẽ tụt lại phía sau nếu như mình không áp dụng số hóa, thì lúc đó công ty sẽ bắt đi cái vị thế đang có, thì họ sẽ nỗ lực cho cái việc hỗ trợ công ty để thay đổi, trong đó có cái việc số hóa. Và cái nhóm thứ ba mà chị nghĩ đó là nhóm theo số đông. Nếu đa phần mọi người phản đối, họ phản đối. Nếu đa phần mọi người ủng hộ thì họ sẽ ủng hộ. Họ không có ý kiến gì cả, họ rất là dễ chịu. Thì đối với với những cái phân khúc như vậy á, chị nghĩ là một cái chủ doanh nghiệp á, đầu tiên là họ sẽ phải biết tận dụng các cái công cụ liên quan đến củ cà rốt, cây gậy của củ cà rốt như thế nào để động viên, khuyến khích nhân viên khi mà họ áp dụng số hóa. Cái thứ hai nữa, họ cũng phải truyền được cái văn hóa công ty, làm thế nào để nhiều các bạn nhân viên và sẵn sàng thay đổi, sẵn sàng chấp nhận thử thách khi mà chuyển đổi số hóa cùng với công ty. Và số lượng đó mà đủ nhiều thì đương nhiên là cái nhóm số 3 họ sẽ theo. Thì đó là cái cách mà một chủ doanh nghiệp chị nghĩ là nên chuẩn bị.
Wow, rất là cảm ơn, rất là cảm ơn chị. Thank you so much for your sharing. So I have a question here, and I would love to bring to the panelists for 3 of you, because I think this question very interesting. You talk about the resistance of the current employee regarding the adoption of digital tool. What about recruiting new employee? Is it easy to find the right talent with enough digital expertise? This one I will let I'll let 3 of you. So who want to go first? Miss Diệu Hằng. Làm sao để tuyển nhân tài chị?
Chị nghĩ là để tuyển nhân tài thì chắc là cái đầu tiên nhân tài họ có sự họ chắc chắn là họ có nhiều offer, đúng không? Một trong những cái để tuyển nhân tài thì chắc là mức độ hấp dẫn của cái công ty, mức độ hấp dẫn của cái core value của cái công ty đó, để giúp họ từ bỏ những cái offer khác họ tới với mình. Nó giống như việc là chúng ta cưới một người vậy đó. Thì biết là bên ngoài có thể có rất là nhiều người giỏi hơn, xinh đẹp hơn, nhưng mà họ vẫn quyết định chọn mình, bởi vì mình sẽ có những cái thứ người ta gọi là contribute phù hợp với nhau nữa. Bởi vì nếu đi cùng với công ty đó thì họ sẽ có một cái lộ trình phát triển phù hợp với cái lộ trình cá nhân luôn. Lộ trình phát triển của công ty phù hợp với lộ trình phát triển của cá nhân của họ, thì họ sẽ chấp nhận từ bỏ một vài cái benefit khác để làm cùng với mình. Và quan trọng nó như một mảnh ghép ấy, nó có thể contribute được với nhau. Nên chị thì chị nghĩ là giữ một người, tức là thu hút một người tài đã khó, giữ một người tài còn khó hơn. Và quan trọng nhất là một cái tổ chức tốt không phải là một tổ chức có khả năng thu hút người tài và giữ người tài, mà một cái tổ chức phải có khả năng build cái người tài, tạo ra người tài. Bởi vì mình làm thế nào một người không có tài giỏi mà đến khi họ tham gia cùng với công ty của mình, sau quá trình rèn luyện các kiểu thì họ trở thành một cái người tài giỏi, và lúc đó thì họ mới gắn bó lâu dài với mình được. Thì đó là cái mà chị nghĩ là chị chia sẻ.
Wow, cảm ơn chị rất là nhiều luôn. I think you got a point that I quite love it. That is, a company is not the one that recruit retain the talent, but also the one that can build the talent. Well, this is something that the business owner should remember. And I think that as a business owner, when you listen to it, you should apply it to your company. And it's not easy to just recruit and retain, but how to build it, right? How about Ms. Huela and Mr. Đức? Any point that you want to share?
Em rất đồng cảm với những gì chị Hằng chia sẻ. I mean, I definitely learned a lot and totally agree with what Ms. Hang just mentioned in terms of finding that perfect, the right candidate for the company and allowing them to grow as well, right? So there's two parts in that we see usually. So number one is how to continuously recruit the right mindset candidate. As in, especially now more than ever, when recruiting, when hiring, we look for candidates with an innovative mindset and with some or a lot of the digital skills needed. And that is already hard enough, right? Because there's so many options available nowadays. So how to really retain the employees, the staff that we have. So for our company, for example, we're trying to instill a growth mindset for our staff. Meaning that, you know, we're trying to host trainings, we're trying to have activities of how to better connect with our staff, how to better understand their needs, and allowing them to learn to upskill, to learn the more, the newer skills, the more digital, the more in-demand skills in order to serve their positions or serve with the company's mission too. Yeah, so I guess it is a very difficult process, but there's two parts on recruiting and on continuously training and providing a good working environment for the staff as well.
Thank you, Huế. Mr. Đức, do you want to add in? Or are you gonna move on?
Yeah, it's a constant struggle for us, and I don't think we're doing the best job ever. So I mean, I guess what we're trying to do is that everyone is involved. So not only the management, the team leader, we try to have this as a constant topic of discussion. So not only the management, team leaders, and team itself, that we are try to promote as much discussion as possible. Yeah.
Wow. So in your company, everyone should be the ambassador and spread that and attract the talent in your company. That's what you said, right? Interesting point of view. But well, I want to bring all of you some of the part like this too. So the last thing that the business owner want is to make huge investment in a digital tool and fall short with implementation. To prevent this, business owner need to approach employee at the right time to gain their support and also manage any resistance to change, right? So from the HR perspective, when and how should you engage employee to discuss these changes and secure their support? How should you as a business owner handle resistance if there is any? So Ms. Diệu Hằng, could you share a bit more?
Ở Việt Nam trong một vài công ty mà chị tư vấn á, thì một trong những cách nào mà lại giúp cho các công ty đã chuyển đổi số thành công á, là người ta sẽ phải sắp xếp nhân sự trước đó. Vì biết rằng là khi áp dụng chuyển đổi số á, thì sẽ có một bộ phận nhân sự thừa ra. Nếu như chúng ta làm automation các kiểu thì sẽ có một nhân sự thừa ra, thì họ sẽ bắt đầu training đào tạo để dịch chuyển. Thay vì theo đúng nhu cầu phát triển thì họ phải tuyển mới một vài bộ phận khác, thì bây giờ họ sẽ ngưng tuyển mới mà họ sẽ luân chuyển trong nội bộ. Thì cái cách đó nó sẽ giúp là một á, là những cái nhân sự họ giữ lại, họ có thể những nhân sự mà họ đã gắn bó với công ty lâu ngày thì họ có cái văn hóa sẵn rồi, họ yêu công ty sẵn rồi, họ hiểu về quy định công ty sẵn rồi, thì để họ dịch chuyển qua bộ phận khác và họ sẵn sàng cho việc dịch chuyển đó, thì mình có thể đào tạo để luân chuyển họ. Nó cũng sẽ giải quyết được cái bài toán là mình không có sa thải nhân sự, trừ những trường hợp mà họ hoàn toàn có thể adapt được với cái vị trí mới hoặc là cái phòng ban mới, thì lúc đó buộc phải sa thải, bởi vì tất cả sự thay đổi nếu có đều phải có sự hy sinh. Đó là chuyện bắt buộc. Thông thường chúng ta muốn thay đổi thì chúng ta chấp nhận một sự hy sinh nào đó, thì trong nhân sự cũng vậy. Chúng ta sẽ cố gắng hết sức để duy trì, để giữ được cái đội ngũ và để luân chuyển cái đội ngũ. Thì thường là một vài cái công ty mà bên chị có tư vấn liên quan đến chuyển đổi số thì các bạn làm cái phần đó rất tốt. Công nhân trong nhà máy sau khi áp dụng automation dự kiến sẽ sa thải 20-30% nhân sự, thì lúc đó họ sẽ build một cái nhà máy khác, đó họ chuyển dần dần qua và áp dụng, thì lúc đó không bị phản ứng, bởi vì mọi người rất là sợ mất việc. Thì đó là cái thứ nhất. Xử lý lại cái phản kháng thì chị nghĩ là áp dụng chuyển đổi số nó giống như hồi xưa đến giờ mình đi trên cái tàu bình thường á, và bây giờ mình chuyển qua đi cao tốc á, thì không phải ai cũng phù hợp để lái tàu cao tốc cả. Đây sẽ có những người mà mình có thể mua qua, sẽ có những người mình phải cho rớt lại. Thì chính cái chủ doanh nghiệp thì cũng không nên ép buộc nhân viên là bắt buộc phải lên tàu hay không, bởi vì nếu người ta lên mà người ta không phù hợp thì nó lại gây cản trở cho quá trình vận hành tiếp theo nữa. Thì chúng ta có thể quan trọng nhất là những người lên tàu thì phải đồng lòng và đồng thuận thì mới dễ vận hành. Nên cái này thì mình nghĩ là chủ doanh nghiệp thì cũng nên mạnh dạn, founder cũng nên mạnh dạn, khi nào cần cắt thì mình phải cắt thôi, cần chuyển tất cả sự thay đổi để đòi hỏi có sự hy sinh. Rồi, xin cảm ơn.
Well, it's not easy that way. There's a one question that I would love to ask you right now, Miss Diệu Hằng, and well, I'll read it out loud so everyone can hear it. So there's a question from Myanmar. What are some suggestions to begin your digitalization process during COVID-19, especially in a country like Myanmar with a low digital literacy rate? Làm sao để mình có thể bắt đầu cái giai đoạn mà chuyển đổi số trong cái giai đoạn Covid này, đặc biệt là ở những cái nước như Myanmar với cái tỷ lệ mà hiểu biết về chuyển đổi số nó thấp đó chị?
Chị nghĩ Covid nó chỉ là cái vấn đề thúc đẩy chuyển đổi số nhanh hơn thôi, chứ chuyện chuyển đổi số đương nhiên là nó sẽ không thể tránh khỏi được. Hồi xưa ai mà áp dụng công nghệ, áp dụng chuyển đổi số đó là thế cạnh tranh, còn bây giờ mà ai không làm chuyện đó thì mình sẽ bị tụt hậu. Nên chuyện đó nó chỉ là một cái Covid, nó chỉ là một cái động lực, nó là một cái cơ hội để mình thay đổi to trend thôi, chứ thật ra là chuyện đó thì nó không tránh khỏi rồi. Và bởi vì nó là cơ hội để thay đổi những thứ mà hồi xưa đến giờ mình muốn thay đổi, mình ngần ngại không thay đổi, thì đây là lúc buộc phải thay đổi. Thì đối với chị nghĩ nó là cơ hội, và chính những cái quốc gia giống như những cái quốc gia mà ít áp dụng công nghệ số thì đây nó lại là cơ hội rất nhiều, đặc biệt là trong thời điểm Covid, khi tất cả mọi thứ đều phải chuyển qua online, đều phải chuyển qua sử dụng digital các kiểu.
Cảm ơn chị. Thanks a lot for your sharing. It's quite interesting with that. And well, come back to Miss Huela. Could you walk us through how you approach that discussion with your team? Resistant discussion. How did you overcome resistance and incentivize employees to embrace the adoption of new digital tools?
Before answering that question, I would like just to add very briefly on the question that we just received from Myanmar on how to start the digitalization process.
Okay.
I think it would have to begin with the leaders, you know, like yourself, if you're considering thinking of adopting to any tools or transitioning to more online presence, for example. And this is because I believe that as leader, we need to gather who are the early digital supporters, like I mentioned before, who you can really leverage that support in order to help expand that, that influence to other people as well. So have a small team of eager participants who are willing and committed to learning the different digital technologies that are available out there. And back in the day, we also worked with consultants, ERP consultants, to really understand, you know, the technology behind the system, the tool. So working with consultants could also be another suggestion for adopting the technology. Now, to answer Anthang's questions, so as mentioned before, we fortunately all of our special task force team were on board to achieve our objective. We also communicated the objective of why we need ERP to all our staff to maintain that transparency. Some approaches that we used were identifying who were the early digital adopters, like I mentioned, leveraging their enthusiasm to convince and influence others, verbal encouragement, praises, and incentives such as bonus. Another factor that is very important that we realized is that we were able to see the improvement and progress that using ERP had contributed to our daily operations. So for example, it has reduced so much time needed on manual paperwork. Another example is our procurement team can easily forecast and plan for materials order way in advance by receiving up-to-date inventory data. So seeing those improvement progress and understanding how that can cut a lot of time and costs for us is an important factor to help convince the people who are more resistant.
Interesting. Well, how about Mr. Duke? Is there any sharing from your company perspective?
Again, Walia has really made a good points. I think maybe just one thing that I would like to add is that sometimes when you run an initiative, their employees, they're fearful of the change. Maybe they are afraid that some management software will collect data that will penalize them in terms of performance metric and or job security, so forth. So I think it's important that you build trust, and sometimes building trust takes time. I think it's important that you're open about the objective, but also do it consistently and show them that what you're trying to do is not gonna you know, unfairly penalize them, and build trust along the way. Maybe that's one thing that I would like to add.
Okay, so many businesses put up digitalization because the initial time investment required for data entry training. So SMEs are already bogged down with daily operational tasks, and finding additional time for these initial requirements can be very challenging. So Mr. Duke, how would you suggest entrepreneur balance the time and resource commitment between executing regular operational activity and preparing for digital adoption?
I think this is a very difficult question, but at the same time, I think just one principle that that we all talked about already is your commitment and persistent. So from the beginning, you have to know what you're going to do and stick with it, no matter what. So it's important to, from the beginning, understand what's required to keep this initiative running and your time commitment from the beginning, and then you evaluate if this is worthwhile. Yeah, I think you may consult with your consultancy. You may talk with your other business owner who have gone through the same initiative, or you understand your team and talk about it. So yeah, I think a lot of work about your time commitment should come at the beginning, at the understanding phase, and rest of it is commitment and persistence.
Okay. Well, from what you are sharing, I want to add a bit from the time and resource commitment. So when your company running, of course that everyone like on the bus, and we focus on the target, and we see that okay, this is how we're gonna go. But among those who on the bus, there should be someone that take care that okay, which road that we go, and we should see around the two sides whether there is a scenery, there is any obstacle. But we should have the backstage who think up ahead, like okay, during in the next like 1 or 2 years, what we should do, and we assign that small team to think and prepare for it before we can take the whole company to change. And with the like a small step every time to repair and research, and the team that implement. So if the implementation can be successful in a very small scale, they can scale up that kind of small project. And that kind of incubation that we advise for some company. And I think that is also a way that the company should follow. And sure. Come back to Ms. Huela, I want to ask you that, how did you make time to overcome this initial hurdle? Did you leverage any seasonal downtime in your business to digitalize your business processes like COVID-19?
Oh yeah, since COVID started last year, and with all the lockdowns happening, that has given us a lot of the boosted downtime to further reevaluate our operations and participate in various trainings needed for different technologies. Going back to our ERP adoption story, number one thing is that we recognize that this is a must-have system in order to optimize our operations and to make better informed decisions on time. So we have to allocate a lot of the time to implement, going through on the migration of data on the very painful stuff, and really learn how to use it. Another thing is that because we implemented in phases, following a roadmap, we had a timeline for each department, we were able to maintain both the daily operations and rollout trainings. So implementing in smaller phase would really help too, instead of, like just immediately implement it right away. So our staff were trained to use ERP every day since the rollout started, with constant support from our IT team and a supplier. And then eventually they gradually gain experience from there.
Thanks a lot for your sharing. It's quite interesting. Well, I received some of the questions from the audience, and to be frank, it's a bit is a bit challenging. So I would love to take one. So how to overcome massive challenges in digital tool? This is the one question that from the audience. He or she did not give any context yet. Anyone want to? Wow, I have this one. This question is much more interesting than the previous one. So, in your opinion, looking forward, what is the next in a journey of digitalization when an ERP is already in place? What area in your business should be digitalized that usually not pay enough attention to, like finance or accounting, or like any like a back office that not making a lot of revenue, so not people not pay enough attention. I think I'll pour this one to you, Huela.
Yeah, I think that question is for me. So the next step for us now, ERP is pretty much a whole integration system. So you can always add more modules, more application onto the system, depending on what the needs are, right? So the next step for us that we're actually looking at is how to make our production and facilities even smarter, leveraging technologies like IoT sensors, AI, leveraging big data that we always gather throughout our production process. So we're actually been exploring and looking at sensors, cameras, who allowed our warehouses to be a lot smarter, and allowed us to understand, when the machines are about to break, because that would save a lot of the bottleneck downtime in manufacturing. Once we can identify, if machine A is about to break, then we can automatically fix it right away to prevent having a disruption within that whole supply chain.
Wow, interesting. Do you want to add in, Miss Diệu Hằng?
Câu này chị nghĩ là Huệ La trả lời là ok rồi.
Yeah.
Vì nó hơi chuyên về cái lĩnh vực nào mà trong doanh nghiệp mà số hóa thành công á, để anh được quan tâm á, thì chắc là Huệ La trả lời là ok rồi.
Okay. So Benjamin have another question. I would love to bring it on here. So what are the top digital tools like software, CRM, ERP, for which you recommend startup to invest in? What tool, digital tool? Mr. Dukley, Fin2B.
So I mean, my business is providing tools for financial institutions, so maybe it's not so relevant our business itself, but yeah, I think ERP is something that I think everyone might benefit. So that definitely among the my experience in Korea and business owners that I meet, ERP can make a very big difference. One thing that I want to add is that there's a lot of funding in Korea to support SME to adopt ERPs. So a lot of SMEs did it. However, it's not always easy to use it. I think for me, when you talk about next step of getting the ERP is how to use it. For instance, in a factory, when you are recording something and it needs to be inputted to ERP, a lot of times the workers resist, and then when management doesn't pay attention, they do it less and less, and sometimes once a day, and they don't input correctly. So yeah, sensors and the IoT things can help, but sometimes it just comes down to how to have discipline to use it, and just it's constant struggle. So it doesn't end at just getting the tool. It's about how to use it, I think.
Yeah, you what you are sharing make me remember to a story that I was told a few months ago about a company that invests in $300 million for one of the system that very I have to say that very costly at first, but secondly, it's very visionary, something that they want to apply for their whole factory across the globe. And then no one used. And the top director are very curious, what happened with this one? And then they ask for the worker at the factory, okay, if we want to improve this one, how can we do it? And the worker suggestion with the puzzle, with the billboard, and then everything done with that solution. And you know, like sometimes solution not come from the technology. Sometimes the solution will come from the insight and experience from the worker that work with us. Technology is just to facilitate the process and make it easier and convenient for us to achieve our goal. So technology is not everything, right? So yeah, so get back to the question. I want to ask Ms. Johan. So what is the top three? You know, like you are the starter, you are the one that organized one of the biggest event in Vietnam, and you should. So what is the top three digital tool that you should recommend startups or should invest in?
Thật ra là đây là câu hỏi khó. Vì thật ra mình không thể nào khuyên được, bởi vì nó tùy thuộc vào cái khẩu vị, tùy thuộc vào nhu cầu của cái startup đó. Bởi vì nếu các bạn có tiền, các bạn làm full option thì các bạn xài ERP, nhưng mà giống như Thắng nói hồi nãy, xài ERP chưa chắc là mọi người, một cái cục lớn như vậy chưa chắc mọi người đã xài hết, nhiều khi là mua xong rồi không ai xài. Quan trọng là mình thực sự biết là cái nhu cầu của mình là gì và cái công cụ nào có thể giải quyết nhu cầu đó. Và cái nhu cầu này thực sự là có đem lại giá trị không, nó có tiết kiệm hơn hay không, nó có kiếm được doanh thu hay không, thì nó là dễ nhất để mình phán đoán. Cái lời khuyên chị nghĩ là nó sẽ phải xuất phát từ nhu cầu là muốn tiết kiệm hơn hay là muốn kiếm được nhiều tiền hơn, thì có những cái công cụ nó phù hợp thì mình lựa chọn. Còn phần mềm ERP hay là CRM thì nó phụ thuộc vào cái nhu cầu của mình thôi. Tùy từng cái startup, chị không có lời khuyên chung cho tất cả startup giống vậy.
Okay, thank you, chị. I have a very interesting question. It's more on the managing a family-owned business. So the question, I have been involved in my family business since graduation for the past 5 years. Since my involvement, I have been trying to improve some manual aspect of the business with digital solution, but I'm having a lot of resistance from old management. In their point of view, they have been working this process in the past 30 and 40 years already, and it's been working fine. But from my perspective, we can save a lot of energy and time with solution. How would we be able to manage and balance between two, or convince old management to adapt to change? I think Đức, you are the second entrepreneur in your family, right? Your father may manage something that you don't like. When you adopt your business, you may find something and you want to. So how can
Yeah, my father is an SME owner, and I actually, help him out even today about running the company. And so my background is, so I was a PCG consultant before joining my father's company. So I just been involved in process innovation as my previous career. So I had an impetus to a lot of things, but a lot of times I realized that I found the same thing. They resist change, but I found that it's important to find common grounds for the beginning of the change. So, for instance, my father's business is related to machinery, and safety is one issue that everyone can agree on, and they would like to improve. So, I was able to make small changes based on finding specific things that everybody can agree on, and they want to improve. So if they so some of the things that I mean, for instance, like how they do sales, things like that, has been they've been doing that for a very long time. It's very difficult to change. So I mean, I don't think I was very successful in changing a lot of things. However, I was able to create the seed for change by changing, starting from safety, and the and second thing I've done is the customer feedback, how they can be useful to our company, which they also agree on. So I think, I mean, it's just going back to the question again. It's difficult, and sometimes I found out that sometimes it's necessary to change, but if you do find a few things that everybody can agree on, that could be a start.
Wow, nice. And I also know another example. Could you share more, Huela?
I totally agree with what Mr. Duke just shared. It's very important to find a common ground and what is the most basic goal or objective that everyone could agree on. Now, for us, as I mentioned before, there were, even though we had a pretty supportive team who were eager to change, there were some some people who resisted against the change. And unfortunately, they're also more towards the older generation who are very used to the habitual way of doing the task. So how we approach it is that, number one, again, we communicate the goal that we want to achieve and how to envision our company in the long term, utilizing that digital tool, right? And then we also leveraging the early adopters to help convince and influence. But there were a couple that unfortunately we had to let go. I have to admit, because there was a different mindset in terms of how to operate different things, and eventually we have to think about the company as a whole, how we as leaders and managers perceive the company to be on longer term. And obviously change is the only constant, right? Especially now more than ever. We cannot stick with the old traditional way of doing forever. We need to have some sort of vitamins injected, some sort of catalyst to help us reach more customer, to help us save costs, save time. So unfortunately, for those who are not willing to upskill or to learn with the digital adoption, we had to let them go.
Okay. Wow, from two of your sharing, make me remember to a conversation that I just have with an entrepreneur like this. So what she did with her family-owned business is that she wants to change the way that the sales and marketing department use for the paperwork with the Excel sheet, just simple like that, because every record in their cell they did just on the paper and they record track daily. And what she did is that she asked her father, "Hey father, I want to have your opinion about this one because I don't know." And she, on the way that her father sharing, he engaging with her on how they're gonna solve it. And she just asked to the point that her father come to something like, "Hey, can you just come out and bring some of the solution to me, and then we can solve it together." And she told me that in the past, if I bring some of the solution to him, he will refuse totally at first and did not have a chance for me to explain how cool it is. But from the perspective way, when I change the way, I start ask him for the insight, for the advice, he start to share with me and encourage me to bring solution in. So that's how the way that I think that the F2 business owner, you should take that. And I found that it's very interesting too. Well, that is the sharing, but we still have the one more question that needs to be done. So what can be done with digitalizing more on the soft side of the business? Human resource, employer benefit, and recognizing performance. Well, who want to answer this one? Human resources, employee benefit, and recognize performance with digitalizing. Actually, it's a very difficult question. And today, I think if the panelists cannot give you the certified question, I will chase them. And then hopefully that we can have some of the answer that we can public later for you to have it. So the panelists, do you have any question with it? Any answer with this question? Mr. Duke? Everyone seems very serious with the question. I love it.
I don't think I have a direct experience in trying to digitalize the entire aspect of this of the things described in this question. However, there are certain things that we do to facilitate the human resources and things. So I mean, for instance, just the very difficult chore of just maintaining the like the vacation days and things like that. You can digitalize so there's no argument about what was done, and also about your time and things like that. The small things that we have done that helped to I guess mainly to reduce burden for the HR managers in our companies. I don't know. That's this is a very difficult question, I think.
Well, somewhat you give us some the perspective that make us think. Well, any other panelists, Miss Yu Hang or Huela, do you want to input? Or I will bring another question. That's gonna be the last one. So this one, I think you guys can have more insight. So out of the three, time, cost, and people, which one is the hardest one to manage? Time, cost, and people, which one? For digital. So Miss Yu Hang, I think you have the answer.
Yeah. Chị nghĩ là con người, bởi vì số hóa cuối cùng cũng là mong muốn tạo nên một cái công cụ để giúp cho khách hàng thuận tiện hơn, người lao động thuận tiện hơn, người chủ cũng dễ quản lý hơn. Nên final cuối cùng nó vẫn là focus vào con người, và con người phải là cái xương sống và là động lực của chuyện đó. Công cụ chỉ có thể phát huy được nếu con người đồng ý sử dụng, còn nếu không thì cũng thua.
Okay, Ms. Huela.
Absolutely agree. Definitely the people, because like Ms. Hang just mentioned, right? Any digital tools are born actually from us, by us, to serve a purpose or to tackle challenges. So how to really leverage the tools in order to achieve certain objectives. And besides that, you know, for time and cost, time is also used by people essentially, and cost again are also paid by people. And there are a couple of different channels for cost that you can tackle, but with people, there's a lot of different factors that we need to consider.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ms. Huela. How about Mr. Dukley?
All of them are very challenging for as a startup, but it seems to me that it's with time and cost, there is maybe a system way you can approach it in more logical way and have create something useful by some kind of process and rules. But with people, it's much more difficult because it's how to influence behavior of people. It's not something so straightforward, and it requires time and cost. So I think people is most difficult.
Okay, thank you. And again, thanks a lot for the panelists to share with me and the audience your insight, experience, as well as the knowledge that you've been working in a field. And again, for the audience, before we leave the webinar, I would love to conduct the poll to see that, well, what is the useful or the content or not, and the session compared to your expectation, what it is. So let us know, so the next time when we organize the event, we can improve it. And one last thing I want to share is that, so last year research publication in Myanmar, Cambodia, Indonesia, and Malaysia is already in the internet. And if you want to access the study, we can share with you. So for the publication launch for the path to digitalization for WSME, policy breakthrough and learning from Vietnam, Singapore, and South Korea will be launched on 14 December 2021. So you are all welcome to receive our publication link. So if you are interested, let us know. So before we end our event, I would love to invite Ms. Muna to say a few words to close our webinar.
Hi, thank you so much. This was an amazing session. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, I'm just rejoining as a panelist from the audience. I have learned so much from you all, and your insights have been really helpful. I also saw that there were so many questions asked, and you know, I hope we do another session in the future with you and to hear all the progress of the work that you guys are doing. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting our work. We've done this research in 7 countries, so it's been a lot of work, but we couldn't have done it without all the dedication, the commitment of the research teams and, you know, experts like yourselves coming on board sharing your experience, and yeah, so really grateful for that, and thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, Tan, for moderating the session.
Thank you, everyone. See you soon in the future.
Bye.
Bye.